name's Jonathan Katz. This is Raoul, we've already met. I wanted to let you know, in case anyone's going to run out, on your way out, there are copies of Raoul's book for sale in the gift shop. There are also incidentally copies of my book for sale in the gift shop. If you should happen to get real extra credit and stick around for the entire conversation and buy them, I'm sure I guess speak for both of us when I say we'd be happy to sign any copies that you get. Either one, we don't really care. So I'm going to launch into, everybody can hear me, right? So I'm going to launch into conversation here, and then we'll open it up very quickly, and we'll kind of go from there. Maybe I'll interrupt a couple times with some more questions in my head. One thing that I wanted to ask that I've thought about when watching the film is you're obviously quite hard, and I think rightfully so, on a lot of people in official government positions. But one thing that I don't believe is discussed in the film is that you yourself have been in official government positions. You were the Minister of Culture in the 1990s. And I was wondering how the experience of actually being an official in a government influenced the way that you understood the political reaction to the earthquake and the organizations that were responsible.
Well, my experience as a minister was, I think, key in my understanding of what was going on. Obviously, I could see that the way the situation was dealt with could not function. I know how the Haitian administration functioned. I know how the people react to this administration. I have been personally involved with negotiating with the international community. So I know the rules, I know the procedures, and it was very clear to me very early on that what was going on was a tremendous chaos. So, and the second thing, my experience allowed me to have access that was key to this film. I don't think I would have ever got money to make this film from this point of view if I didn't have one. I'm an older filmmaker, I have made film, I have people who trust my work, so they trust me on this project. But secondly, I could also sell them that no matter who would try to make a film on Haiti, I would for sure have a better access than anybody else. And so that's what I gathered from my own personal and political experience.
And I'll ask one more question before we open it up here. One of the things that's really interesting about your work is the way that you move, especially between projects, between documentary projects and I guess we'd call them fiction projects. Very often, for instance, in your films about Lumumba, you did a documentary, then you did a dramatic film. Also now with the earthquake, you have a new film that's just now making the rounds, Murder in Paco, which is a dramatic film that follows this documentary. But of course, as you were discussing yourself before the movie, in this documentary, it's not even as clean as a division as that, because with, for instance, the device of the narrators, there's a little bit of an element of dramatization, let's say. Fiction invading in a way that for somebody, perhaps me as a journalist, might feel less comfortable with in my work. So I was wondering if you could talk about why you exist in both of those worlds and why you're willing to mix them together in a work such as Critical Systems.
Well, first of all, there are two major structural circumstances that made my job difficult. First of all, I'm working in an industry which is an industry that calls itself an entertainment industry. And my subjects are mostly very difficult subjects. Hard to finance and hard to control. So when like in this particular film, I knew that I had one shot and I had to choose my subject carefully. I focus on it and I stay on it, which was how does the international community works in a country like Haiti. And the film is not just about Haiti. It's a case study for everything happening throughout the world today, including in places like the United States after Katrina, after Sandy. All the experience are up to details the same. And if you go to New Orleans today, you will still find places with, that have not been rebuilt, or places that have been rebuilt in a way that the locals don't want to go there. Sandy is even worse. So there is a major example aspect in this film that is important. So secondly, in my line of work, film is not a very particularly fine instrument, unless you become very didactic, not to explain, but to deal with certain issues. And the way I find how to deal with is to have part of my brain working like on the documentary, and part of my brain working on a more fictional setting. And in this case, that was particularly important because the freedom I have in doing a dramatic piece is different than the one I have in the documentary. Although both of them taken together do give back the reality that I lived through. So it's for me, it's a kind of comfort. I'm able to focus in each film to the goals I set to myself, and not being, to feel obliged to put everything in the film, or to put too much things in the film, so that at the end of the day you don't know what the film is about. So having those two tracks helped me tremendously to make these choices.
I haven't seen the new film yet, but I saw the trailer for it this week. It looks absolutely phenomenal. So on that basis, I can recommend it. I can open it up now. Does anybody want to jump in? Go ahead.
So, I'm just going to break it down. Each Latin American has every economy, and so you both would be pleased to know that before I got the email about the film, I had recorded the book, Jonathan, to use next experience. So, learning about the documentary is just going to be absolutely amazing to combine those two. I just want to say, I'll get the version so you can understand that. But I see an interesting parallel between your work and Stephanie Black's Life and Death, which is over 50 years old. Same cast of characters, just a different twist on that.
Life and Death.
Like, yes, absolutely. But here's my question. So, Jonathan, you led your comments by saying that Raoul seemed to be rather tough on some individuals. I seem to recall that you were actually quite tough, although it took a long time to get there with some of those characters in the book as well, particularly Jean-Marc. But you both have portrayed him from different perspectives. I'm kind of curious about how you were looking at the very same situation. And here he comes across as being the one who is really frustrated with the international community. You see him kind of quite differently. So, can you try to resolve his
Yeah, which of us is right?
Well, probably both right. What I would say about this aspect, because some voices in Haiti have said that I have been too nice with Préval and with Bellerive. But that was not the purpose of this film. Because it's a very tricky critic. Because in fact, for the last 40 years, each time you want to critique humanitarian aid or development policies, the quickest response is to say, look at how they corrupt they are. Look at how the government is stealing the money. Look at how they are incapable to run their country. So that you never get to the point where you actually can analyze the work of the international community itself. And my goal was from the get-go not to go into that dilemma. My subject was not President Preval, was not Jean-Max Bernier. Well, both of them are, Preval is an elected official, democratically elected, and Bernier is a prime minister. So the kind of information they have, of practice they have, is important for me. And I have to find a way to give them a because that's what is most of the time also portrayed in the press. When you listen to CNN or you listen to any network, you would find that there is no leadership in Haiti. It's not that it's the leadership I would like. There are differences. I've been a very vocal adversary of Preval. I agitated against his election. So nobody can accuse me of of being nice with Preval, but that's not the issue. They are people who are running a country. And they are the one, by the way, negotiating with exterior governments on every project. So I need to hear their voice. What are they saying about it? No matter if they are corrupt or not, that's not the issue. And what Jonathan, I read Jonathan's book, of course, from a journalistic perspective, that's not a point of view. It's not in contradiction with what I was saying. If Bernier is corrupt and I have to go to jail, he will have to go. But that's not the topic of this film.
I would say also in terms of form, in a documentary, and particularly the way that Raoul did his, Belrive spends more time on screen speaking for himself. In a book, it's much more dictatorial. There's one voice, and I can sort of allow in other voices and quotes as I like. But I think it also changes the way that certain characters can be portrayed, because for better or for worse, often both, people can't speak for themselves as much in a single author's work of nonfiction as they can in a documentary that shows more.
And by the way, as a filmmaker, I also have the responsibility to confront the film I made to those people. I show the film to Preval, I show the film to Bernier. And I have to be able to assume that whatever I say in the film. And what you see in the interviews are selected part. I wrote it in a way that I can use him in a certain way in the film. But I spent hours and hours of interview with both of them. And with Preval, I used very little of my interviews with him. So Preval, I show him the film, he said, okay, you were fair. Bernier, he said, okay, but he said, well, you put me in a very difficult position toward all these people with whom he also has different type of relationship. But the way, of course, he seems to be a very radical and critic of international aid. But he was not only that. I use his own word. He didn't lie, but it's a construct, of course, as well. Well, the first question is clear. What was the most difficult thing besides creating a structure to allow me to make this film? Because, as you know, in documentary there is not a lot of money, and the type of money I needed is to sustain a 2 years long production. Usually, even if shooting a film might take 2 years, but usually you don't shoot every day for 2 years. You don't shoot. So I have to have a structure. I have to have crews. Some of them I trained. There were local crews. There were cinematographers from New York, sometimes from Cuba, some people from Cuba, etc., and from France. So I had to have a whole organization to be able to follow what was happening for 2 years. We bought cameras so that we didn't have to rent them because it's expensive. Renting is expensive, so we could, by buying them, be independent, etc. And the second thing was editing, because I had more than 500 hours of material. We shot whole meetings of NGOs, a whole meeting of cluster meetings of bankers, of all sorts of people involved in the reconstruction, or camp people, interviews with camp leaders, etc., etc. So to edit this 400 hours into a film that made sense about a subject that makes no sense was the most difficult task. The second question was about...
But the second question was about your perception before you made
the
movie and after.
No, of course, first of all, before I became a filmmaker, I studied development policy. So, and my father had been in development all his life. I grew up partly in Congo, and my father was among the first people who went there as developers to replace the Belgians working for the UN. So I grew up with those institutions, and I've seen how they've changed over the years. And I've seen how every 10 years there is a new strategy. And it takes 10 years until everybody says it's not working, and let's try something else. So I've been, very familiar with that. And when Haiti happened, the earthquake happened, of course I knew more or less what I was going to experience. But experiencing it, it's another experience. And the kind of bubbles, it was like hundreds of bubbles working in the same place. And when you go inside a bubble and hear them talking, discussing, everything made sense somewhere. You say, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then you go to another bubble and you say, how do I reconnect both? And it didn't make sense anymore. So that's, you knew that, my concern was not that I learned anything new. It was always, my God, how am I going to explain that to people? They won't believe me. And then little by little we were able to find a story that was, made sense, and that still being also emotional and personal. This film is very personal to me. And yes.
Thank you.
Well, the thing is, the agenda was not to connect.
Right, the agenda was not to connect.
It was not about connecting.
Yeah, no,
it's like we know how to do it, we come in and we take over.
Yeah.
Period. And we take over politically. Because one aspect of the film, people sometimes don't really see how important it is the fact not only we have this disaster in terms of the way aid was organized, but we have total ingerence in the sovereignty of Haiti, where you actually have a representative of the Security Council, UN Security Council, who have proposed an airplane to the president, democratically elected president, to tell him to leave the country. By any books, it's a coup d'etat. It's a putsch. And people, the press have written about the film, but this aspect is one of the most terrible. Where you have, by the way, there are two books that I would recommend. One from Ricardo Zaitenfuss, who was the OUA representative in Haiti, who have written about what the international community, in particular what we call the core group, which is the United States, France, Canada, the European Union, Brazil, and maybe two others. And how they, in several meetings, they basically decided not only to topple Preval, which ended up into this offer of a plane, which Preval refused by saying, if I have to choose between Aristide and Allende, I will choose Allende, meaning you can kill me, but I who will not leave. And in that particular meeting afterwards, all the ambassadors of those countries were there, and basically the decision was made to help Préval to leave office. And it was just because one of them, Zeitenfuss, asked, do you know that whatever we are doing, the charter of the OUA will assimilate it to a coup d'etat. And then all the people around the table, suddenly they back up. But it was just a matter of a few minutes, and the plan would have gone on. So that's what we are, and imagine what it have, if they are doing that on the political level, with such big institutions like the UN. The United States, the American ambassador was there. When he saw that the meeting was going the wrong way, he said, okay, forget about it. And that's how they stopped. And the second part of this drama was after the election. The results were publicly, everybody in Haiti knew them. The first person was Madame Maniga, who came first. The second one was Jules Célestin, who was Préval's candidate. And the third one was Michel Martelly. And at one point, the international community decided there is no way we're going to let those two go in the second round. And we have to find a way so that Martelly becomes second. And that's exactly what they did. They threatened the Electoral Commission, and they took over, and they changed the procedure. And it was easy. The way you do that is you start saying, okay, there were manipulation. So in certain votes area, we're going to take 30% of every vote. And seemingly it shows, well, every candidate will be in the same boat. But no, they make sure that they do that where the candidate Célestin would lose the most. And the difference was not huge, by the way. So they managed the numbers and made that Martelly become second. And that was the choice that Martelly become president of Haiti. But the thing is, we are confronted with administration who are always looking for short-term solutions. And there is no short-term solutions. And that's the life we are, the type of civilization we have right now. Politics is about short-term decisions. And nobody dare make long-term decisions. So Haiti, of course, there is a tremendous responsibility upon Haitians themselves. And God knows the sacrifice of the civil society. The civil society has always been there and key to every change in Haiti, including the latest one, the departure of Aristide. 3 days before Aristide left the country, Mr. Colin Powell was supporting him. Dominique de Villepin of France was supporting him. The Canadians were supporting him. And basically they were telling the opposition, we will not recognize any government who would not include Aristide in it. And everybody stick together and say, no, we will not negotiate with him anymore. We have been trying to do that for the last 3 years. And it's over, he's gone. Whether it's in 1 month or in 6 months, but he's gone. And that's when Villepin, the French, say, okay, gonna let him go. And Colin Powell say, okay, if the French are letting him go, we have to let him go. 3 days later, he was gone. So that's, the Haitian society was always able to organize to get rid of anybody who would not respect their rights. But the problem is we have an exhausted civil society. All all the help you see going, all the money going to Haiti, rarely reach those organizations. Or when they reach those organizations, it comes with a price. It's not autonomy. It's a new way of dominating them. So long term, of course, the only solution is that the Haitians themselves succeed in organizing themselves and take their own power in their hands, their own future. But it's a very long process in a country that has been, since its existence, have been under tremendous pressure. People say, Haiti is very poor, but that's what's creating poverty. Haiti was one of the richest colonies of France, and since its existence, which was unacceptable for the international community of the time, and we have been paying the price since then. So it's a long-term story. The only thing I know, Haiti will not disappear. Well, my only hope was that, not hope, for me it was my guide, that I have to make a film that nobody can my wish was that I needed to make a film that nobody could just deny. I had to come with arguments. I have to, by the way, the film is less violent than it could have been. Because the stuff I shot, I could accuse a lot of people. But that was not my intention. My intention was to provoke discussion. And so, of course, I know that the film exists. I made sure that it came out big. The world premiere was at the Berlin Film Festival, one of the biggest film festivals. It got a lot of attention. In this country, and a lot of institutions are using it. A lot of NGOs are using it. Because the discussion is already inside those organizations. The problem is that they never had any backup, or books like Jonathan's book are key as well. But film is something else as well. It's real. You can see the people and you can argument while seeing them. So if we accumulate that kind of work, that will definitely help a sort of, I hope, change in the way they do business, because it's a business. But that's not enough. I hope certain organizations will either change their behavior, their policies, their procedures, or they will explode, or they will be confronted with a population that will not accept that kind of behavior. The film was shown in Haiti, and we organized, I gave it, for free to all television channels in Haiti. And they had a joint airing of the film with a discussion after the film. So it was a big event. And then 2 months later, we did a Creole version of the film. By the way, we have a DVD. In the DVD, there is also the Creole version, dub version. And also, we gave it for free to any organization who wants to use it in Haiti. And we had also joint screening for all television channels. So I think there is a greater awareness in Haiti, and I think it does change the behavior, the communication between NGOs and Haitians. By the way, you see the people I interviewed, they know, they're just saying with other words what the film is saying, but they're all pretty clear about what's going on. And most Haitians are. But a lot of them are not in a situation to say, well, I won't accept your sack of rice, or I have people who needs it in my I won't accept your wooden house, which I know will be down in 2 years, but you know, I need something right now, so I'll take it. But they know pretty well, you know, that camp leader, Zanon, he knows exactly, he's telling you, if I had to build that house, I would have done it differently. So they know exactly. Yes, they have. Of course, I generalize when I say humanitarian aid, NGOs. There are different kind of NGOs. By the way, there are a lot of local NGOs as well. Although we can question their autonomy toward their donors. But even that you can't follow. Priscilla Phelps, the American woman in the film, she told me that she had been involved with that kind of catastrophe. She was on Katrina. She was there for the tsunami, after the tsunami. So she wrote a big, thick book for the World Bank about the aid issue after the tsunami. And she told me some of the organizations to which she gave high points about the way they handled the situation. Those same organizations, they went to Haiti and made exactly the contrary. So you can't even say that it's a matter of organization. It's a lot of parameters. And another important fact is that, maybe you know that as well, the Haitian government had managed to negotiate with the international community a certain way of doing business. So they had an agreement about to reduce the procedures so that, imagine every minister in Haiti have to deal with hundreds of different donors. That means contract. That means that goes contract from 10 pages to 500 pages. And we don't have the team to do that. So we're basically signing stuff that nobody can read. So they negotiate to have, like, instead of hundreds of different procedures and how you run the projects, when do you close down the project, what kind of supervision, etc., all the constraints and conditionalities. And they reduced that to 5 or 6 man matrix. And that was a major step forward to deal with international aid. The earthquake came, so that what I'm telling you is like September, October of 2009. The earthquake came, everybody forgot about that. They start business as usual. So even this lack of institutional memory is like mind-blowing.
There's one thing I was wondering when I was watching. For all the humanitarian catastrophes and clusters, we can say abbreviated, that you covered in 2010, the cholera epidemic does not get screen time in the documentary. I was wondering why you didn't put that.
That was a choice. It's 5 film in itself, just the topic. We did film everything. I've had hours and hours of meetings, and in particular because at the palace there was a sort of task force, basically one run by Preval and the Cubans. That's also another aspect. People always forget the role that Cuba is playing in all those catastrophes, silently. The work of the Cuban doctors in Haiti, nobody speaks about it. The help they brought after the earthquake, nobody speaks about. Their role in handling the cholera epidemic. I filmed all those meetings. The Vice Minister of Health spent months in Haiti. Not like a director, the Vice Minister of Health. He was there, he was in those meetings. So we filmed everything. But it's the choice. I had to really focus on that issue that nobody else had done this way before. And I had to be, so there are enough footage to do a film on cholera, but I couldn't tackle everything in one film. I have a very good editor, Alexandra Strauss, who is a French woman who worked with me and worked on other films. And she started working as after 2 months after we started shooting. So she was in Paris watching what we was doing, and I would send her notes about what I felt was more important or not. And by the time I finished, or even after the first year, I could have a vague red line about what the film could be. And she started editing parts, moments, and then those moments you could then start to put them in a dramatic way. So that was trial and errors process. And also, I was lucky enough to identify within the first 6 months most of the characters that are in the film. Because that's the key. You need characters to tell the story. And Nader, the one who's driving at the beginning of the film and who's at the end, I met him in the first 2 months in a meeting where he sat. It was a cluster, so-called cluster meeting about debris removal, and he was the only Haitian in the room, only black person, and he didn't say a word during the whole meeting. So of course, at the end, I went to him and said, how come you didn't say anything? Would you mind that I interview you? He said, yeah, fine. So we start, start asking me a question, and then the others who were in the meeting start listening, and they realize what had happened as well. And to their benefits, I would say that a few weeks later, the meetings would take place in Nader's office. Because Nader is a very important man. He is not, in terms of hierarchy, he's not at the minister level, but the type of work he's doing and his knowledge of the city of Port-au-Prince is really key. He knows all the canals, he knows everything in that city for years. So they realize who they have in their hands. So that was one of the rare circumstances where actually they react in the proper way and they accepted his leadership. And I filmed a lot of meetings at his office, but which are not in the film, but where they start working together. And so the difficulty were to, and Priscilla as well. Priscilla, I met her maybe 6 months after we start filming, and somebody introduced me to her, and then she was totally open, even a bit naive at the beginning, and say, can I follow you? Can I talk to you? She's always said yes. And, so I was lucky to have those people to tell the story.
But thank you all.